Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. Come on in and sit down, children. It's time for your lesson. Today we have a new word. Our word is beauty. Now we saw both of these words, unity and beauty, in verse 1. How good and how delightful or beautiful. There in the first half of verse 1, is it when brothers dwell together in unity, the second half of verse 1. And then we picked up the unity theme, talking about the oil. It binds together the seat of the will, the strength, and the position or the calling. All of those things are bound together. The Spirit of God does that, bringing unity to the man. Now we're going to talk about beauty. It is like the dew upon Hermon, which ran down upon the hills of Zion. So we switch from unity to beauty, and we immediately have this metaphor that comes straight out of nature. Hermon is that mountain in the northeast of Palestine. It's 3 peaks. It's snow-covered. It's beautiful. It's said, in Israel, you can go skiing in the morning and surfing in the afternoon. You can drive from Hermon to Elon down in the south and go surfing. It's a beautiful place, Hermon, and I remember seeing it myself while I was in Israel. And there on the south side of the tallest mount, there is an old medieval knight's fortress that's been built on the side of that mountain. It's a gorgeous place. But the thing that we need to focus on here is not necessarily the beauty of Hermon, but the beauty of dew. Dew is always a blessing. We run into dew the very first thing in Genesis when we meet the garden. In the garden of God, we find out that the garden is watered by dew. So this always represents God's best, His supply, His freshness. Dew is represented that. And this dew of Hermon, of course, represents the beauty of this passage. Now it comes down and it waters, or it blesses the hills of Zion. Now, I'm sure there's something that could be said about the meteorological nature of the mountain and what effects it has on Palestine. Perhaps the dew of Hermon actually does physically affect the hills of Zion, which is much further south. But directly, you can draw a line from Hermon down through the Rift Valley, and then Jerusalem would just be to the west of that. And perhaps that dew that is coming off of Hermon, and of course Hermon is well watered because it's snow-capped, and it's in the northern part of the country where it's more temperate. So, there's lots of rainfall there, also snowfall there. This would be a beautiful metaphor for that, but it now affects the hills of Zion. We're talking about something spiritual here, not just something physical or meteorological, but the beauty of that now shed abroad throughout the rest of the country, but especially that city where God has placed His name. So we have unity in verse 2, and we have beauty in verse 3, and both of them come from where? They come from the Spirit of God. The Lord Himself unites and brings beauty. And only He can do either of those things. We try as hard as we can as men to create things of great beauty, but usually we fail miserably at it. It is only the beauty that we see in nature that we try to reproduce that actually is beautiful, because God in His creation has done something wonderful. But remember, we're talking about brethren who are dwelling together. It's good and it's beautiful for brethren when they dwell together in unity. So there's a beauty here that is expressing something about the very nature of God. God Himself in that unity expresses a beauty of the Spirit that can be found nowhere else but in the church, because the church is that beautiful arm of the Lord. It is that expression of His great love. His covenant is found there. His grace is there. It is all right there in the church. So tomorrow we're going to look at the second half of verse 3. For there He commanded the Lord the blessing, life forevermore. Join me then on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.